Hi, and welcome to another episode of Life's Beautiful Synergies. My name's Dr. Rachel Behling, and today's topic is going to be all about setting yourself up for success for the following year. So today we're going to really focus on tips and tricks and best practices of how to set those goals and accomplish them for the upcoming year, for those professional and personal things that you want to achieve to make the next year the most amazing year of your life so far. So let's talk about that first step in setting effective New Year's goals. So the first thing to think about is have that moment of reflection. Think about what is coming up in the next year. What are those things that you really is going to add that feel good to next year? Not just feel good, but what are the things that you really want to accomplish? And have that time of reflection now before this year ends so that you are really clear about what you want to accomplish. Because the next piece of that is there's a difference between setting New Year's resolutions and setting achievable goals. A New Year's resolution might just be, I am resolute to not do X, Y, and Z anymore. I'm going to stop procrastinating. I'm going to stop eating dinner at 10 o'clock at night. I'm going to make sure that I don't skip a run when I'm just tired or not feeling motivated. There's a difference between that and setting a legitimate goal. So my goal is to run a marathon in X number of hours. That's a goal. And there's actions and due dates and specific things that you would do. So as we're stepping into this, I want to make sure that as you're looking to wrap up this holiday season, start thinking about what do you really want to accomplish next year and start with that. So as you're thinking about your goals, one component that I want you to really spend some time on, and this is really personal, this is you and yourself and nobody else in the room. But before you commit to those goals, think about what are your personal values? What do you value? And what is your brand out there in the real world that people think about you when you're not in the room? Making sure that those values are top of mind and they're connected to the goals that you want to set. So if one of your values is that you take care of your family, you connect with your family, you have relationships with people in your family. If that's one of your core values is family, then make sure that your goals incorporate something to do with your family. So I guess at the end of the day, the tip here is to make sure that you have that clean alignment between what are your own personal values and the goals that you set for next year. Don't leave that piece out. So after you've had a chance to kind of think about what are your values, what are the goals that you want to have set for next year, the next part that I am going to recommend to you is that you think about how are you going to prioritize them? How are you going to differentiate between something that really, really needs to be at the top of your list and maybe some goals that aren't quite as critical to you having an amazing year next year. So as you're thinking about how to prioritize, think about how you're expecting the year to really play out. Are you expecting a big move? Are you expecting any big changes at work? Is there any big life issues or life moments that you know right now are going to happen? And start thinking about, if I have 5 goals, how many of them really, really could happen regardless of the things that happen to us as adults? And make sure that regardless of what happens next year, you still have the bandwidth, the energy, the emotional grit to complete all of them. So that's where I want you to really think about the goals that you have written down or you have thought out, and how are you going to prioritize them to make sure that the really important ones, that you're able to achieve them as you go through next year. So the next part of that you might be asking is, what if I have too many goals? Will that actually lead me to being counterproductive? right? Because we want to write down everything. We want everything out of our brain and on paper so that we can achieve those goals. But there's pros and cons of that. So if you do have a lot of goals that you're finding you have, maybe you have goals around the different roles that you have in your life. Maybe you have goals of being a mom that have to do with being a mom, to being a sibling, to being a partner, to goals at work, to goals about your own mental health, personal health, physical health. And maybe you walk away with that list and it's a big, long list. So 2 things that you can do. 1, you can group them and you can say, okay, I have 4 or 5 groups. This is about me as a professional and the goals that I have for myself. These are the goals of me as a family member, mom, sister, daughter, wife, nephew, whatever. And then maybe there's another goal about emotional health, physical health. And maybe the last goal is my spiritual health. Maybe think about putting your goals in those buckets, because that inventory itself is going to help you to kind of see, maybe I'm super heavy in one of those buckets. Maybe I have 10 or 15 goals there, right? And maybe there's another goal that's really light, that you only have 1 or 2 things that you have thought out. This is going to help you to not be spread too thin, but it's also going to help you to really realize, can I really achieve, really focus on this many goals at one time? And that's going to help you to kind of step back and look at your calendar and say, how many goals can I really be focusing on concurrently, which will lead back to the prioritization, and also might help you to say, you know what, maybe that's a year after next type of goal. And it's maybe something that I'm better spent focusing on a smaller amount of goals that will set the foundation. So these are just another way to start thinking about the goals and how to really make them achievable for next year. Self-reflection can really improve the goal-setting process. And let me explain what I mean by that. Sometimes we think a goal is really important, or we might say it out loud because we think it's the right thing for us to do. We might feel pressure at work to have that as a goal. We may think that that's something that we didn't really accomplish this year, so we need it for next year. But I want to encourage you to have that time of self-reflection, because your time and how you spend your mental energy is one of the most important and significant gifts that you have for yourself. And that self-reflection is really going to let you be really honest with yourself and where you think you need to spend some time. These goals, they're not for anybody else. They are for you. So that self-reflection is really going to help you to kind of dig deep in the real, true, what you really want to accomplish. Get rid of the stuff that is just fluff. Put aside the things that you know you don't have the energy to really focus on next year, and let that be the outcome of your self-reflection, is really the really critical few goals that you know you need to do. I don't want to say you want to do, but you know you have to do in order to lead you to that life of excellence that you're striving for, by even setting goals in the first place. So if you want to do that reality check to really see if your goal is realistic, it's detailed enough, and it's bodacious enough to take your effort. So this is where you're going to kind of step back and you're going to kind of think through, all right, if is this a 1-year goal? Is this going to take all 12 months in order for me to feel like I've successfully accomplished this goal? Then kind of step back from it and say, okay, if this is a December of next year type of goal, is it realistic for me to accomplish something in January, and then February, and then March? And then what do I have to have done by June, July in order to realistically have it be accomplished in December? Start kind of planning out. Let's say, for instance, you want to run your first marathon in December of next year. Do you really have the time to start running 3 miles and then 5 miles and then 10 miles and then 15 miles in order for you to run 26.2 miles in just 1 year of time if you really haven't ran before. So this is where you can really start, as Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. Look at where you want to accomplish that goal and then work yourself backwards and then think, is it really a realistic goal that I can accomplish in a 1 year time frame? Maybe one of your goals is that you want to save X amount of money in your savings account. But then you really need to go and look at how much dispendable income you have after you've paid your bills and you've got your paycheck. Is that savings goal realistic with where you are right now in your finances? So those are just a couple examples of how to really check to see if the goals that you have in your mind for next year, they are realistic and they're attainable. So the next question that you might be asking me is, okay, so now I've done the self-reflection. I have my list of goals. Now, how do I break it down into actionable steps? I'm going to start out with my favorite tip. So before the year even starts, and you can use whatever calendar app you have on your phone, what kind of AI you might be using, but think about all of the appointments that may derail you, any trips that you might need to take, any doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, anything that you know is going to take up time on your calendar, go schedule it right now. There's nothing that stops you from putting in that business trip that you know that's going to happen, that blocking that family vacation, putting in all of the dental cleaning appointments, the well women exams, any of those appointments that you know are going to happen, go put them on your calendar. You know that you're going to go on a dinner with your husband on his birthday. You know you're going to be visiting your grandparents during Thanksgiving. Like, go ahead and block that out, because then when you go to that month and you look at what you need to accomplish for your goals, you're not tripping over things that you already know about. So tip number one, to really make sure that you have a path to executing your goals, is to take care of the stuff that should be a non-issue. Get that out of your calendar, block that time, and then you can step back and look at what do you have available in January, February, March to kind of focus on those other goals. Now, step number two is take each goal and back it up. So if let's say there's a goal that you want to accomplish by July, go to July and schedule the completion of that goal. So let's say maybe your goal was to have X amount of money into your savings account. Put that goal in July. And then in June, put what is the step that needs to come before that. And then May, and then April, and then March. And maybe there's other things that you need to have in your calendar in order to make July's deadline realistic. So maybe you need to meet with a financial planner. Put that on your calendar in January. Maybe you need to get auto alerts from different accounts to tell you when you're overspending. Or maybe you need to pull out a certain amount of cash and that's all you're going to spend. So maybe there's some actions, and you can do this with any of your goals, whether it's an exercise goal, whether it's a meditation or a time of reflection. You can do those things by putting in the things that you need to do to set the stage for them. Put them in your calendar now so that when you step into the new year after you come back from the holidays, you already have the groundwork for accomplishing several of them without even having to remember. Let's talk about another piece. So how do you make sure that you don't feel overwhelmed by your goals? Maybe it's this time of year, you're going into the holidays, you're thinking about all your goals, and you've kind of defined the perfect year next year. But then you kind of sit back and you look at your calendar, you look at your to-do list, and you think, oh, wow, do I have the energy to do all that? And what if life gets crazy? What if I get thrown a curveball and something happens out of the ordinary? So I guess my advice in this part, and this is a really important part of the advice that I'm sharing today, is that have in your goal planning contingency plans. You know the triggers, right? You know the things that are going to trigger you to want to kind of step back or start procrastinating or to feel overwhelmed and just kind of put a goal to the side, or things that happen that you stopped being as gritty as you might want to be. So I'm going to encourage you in this path of not trying to or letting yourself get overwhelmed with all your goals is to have pause points on a weekly basis or even on a monthly basis that lets you kind of step back, look at your short list of goals, and to think about, what do I want to start, stop, and continue? Are there any of these goals that are not as important now as I thought they were going to be? Is there any of these goals that I want to continue to accomplish them and do those actions? And is there anything that's not on my list that now that I'm a couple months into the next year, I really should start doing because maybe it wasn't in my original scope? So by having those moments of reflection, that's going to help you to not get overwhelmed by having too many actions or too many goals as you start really diving into accomplishing those goals that you set for next year. And just the last point there is be okay with not being on track with all your goals, because sometimes we get a little over exuberant and we think we're going to be able to accomplish things much faster. And I just want to give yourself some grace if things don't happen exactly as you had them planned when you were planning these goals in the first place. So from a personal side, the thing that works for me is at first I take all my goals out of my brain and I put them into ChatGPT. And you could use whatever AI is out there that you like, but I take it out of my brain and I just put it into an AI tool to organize them. And then this is how I personally manage my goals for the next year, is I have a big flip chart and I have it broken down by month. And I write out what are the big goals that I'm going to accomplish in January, February, March. And I have it on a big flip chart and it's on the opposite end of my computer. So when I'm in my home office, on the wall opposite my computer where I have phone calls all day long, I am constantly looking at that 12-month plan of all my goals. It's impossible to ignore. It's impossible for me to miss. And of course, I have them in electronic calendars. I have alerts on my phone, have all that fancy stuff. But that 12-month map or outline of my big goals is right there front and center, and it's impossible for me to miss. So that is just a pro tip from me to you of something that has worked for me over the years that you also might want to mimic in some way. So one thing that you might be asking yourself now is, Rachel, how do I hold myself accountable? And how important is it to have an accountability system as I'm setting up these goals? So this is a couple tips that I want to share with you. First is, if it's not measurable and you can't say yes or no, I accomplished that step, that action, then it's really hard to hold yourself accountable to something. So as you're drafting your goals, and this is something that I want to make sure that we mention here today, is they need to be actionable and they need to be measurable. So then the next part is having an accountability partner. That's important. Not all of your goals need to have an accountability partner. Some of these goals are really personal and they're really internal, and you may not want someone in your business. But if there are those that you can have an accountability partner from someone that you work with, or a mentor, whether it's a mentor in your place of business or someone that's outside of your work, those are great options for having an accountability partner. Or it could be a family member, it could be a spouse, it could be a partner, it could be someone at your local church, someone that is in your social world. those are great accountability partners that will just check in with you. Hey, how are you doing on taking better care of that physicality, of going on walks at night or starting that running program, whatever that might be. But then the second piece is there's also accountability that you need to have with yourself. You need to have a way to measure. Am I where I needed to be in this goal in order to accomplish it by year end or month end or halfway into the year? You have to be able to have a way, whether that's through journaling or any kind of online or automated tracking tools. There's a ton out there. I'm going to leave that up to you to figure out what works best with you. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to measure. You got to be able to check in with yourself and celebrate when you're on track, or to kind of hold yourself accountable when you kind of deviated a little bit or you aren't quite where you should be. And if you find that you're having a hard time with keeping track of all your goals, then that is in itself is a reflection moment to think, do I need to put some of these goals on hold so that I can focus on the 2 or 3 that are really important so that I can get some things across that finish line by the end of the year? Let's pivot just a little bit and let's talk about social media, right? And I don't mean just LinkedIn, Instagram, and so forth. I mean sharing your goals socially so that it's out there in the world with family, friends, people that you might connect with. So there's pros and cons here. First and foremost, be careful of why you're sharing it. Are you sharing it because you want a bunch of likes or a bunch of thumbs up, or you're motivated by other people encouraging you and to help to hold you accountable? Or are you sharing it because there's others out there that will benefit from going on this journey with you? Maybe you want to lose a couple pounds and you've struggled with it for a long time, and you know that sharing your journey is going to help others around you that may also be on this healthy lifestyle that you're trying to create for yourself. So that is a big upside of sharing your journey and what you're trying to accomplish out there very publicly. But you also want to be very mindful that there are some goals that you may not want to put out there in such a public way. You may want to keep those a little bit more private. You may not want to put on Facebook that you're trying to improve your relationship with a sibling that may be not a healthy relationship up to this point. Or maybe there's something in your goals that involves somebody else, and you don't want to put that out into social media because it's part of their journey as well. So there's pros and cons that you need to be really mindful about why you're putting it out there. Is it to motivate you? Is it to keep you from cheating on your goals? Or is it going to help other people come along with you on that journey? Or are there some of your goals that you really do need to keep private and out of Facebook, out of Instagram, out of the world, because they're really a personal goal that's just between you and another person or just within yourself? So I want you to be very mindful about that part of goal attainment as you're thinking about what's going to keep you on track truly at the end of the day. So the other piece of that is external validation. So there are things about that could actually hinder your progress. So if you are if you put it out there and you're looking for external validation, if you put that power in the right hands, that can be really good. So let's say you have a certain goal and you have external validation. You're looking for family or friends or people at work to help to hold you accountable to that, to congratulate you, to give you encouragement. If those people in that role are doing it and they're really clear about the goal that you want to accomplish, then that is a very powerful tool. To get that encouragement, to get that external validation can sometimes be the difference between a goal that maybe you've been kind of working on for a couple years now, but maybe you haven't shared it publicly. You haven't really been looking for that external validation because you weren't sure that you could really commit to it. So sometimes that's the difference. If you put it out there, sometimes that's the difference with saying, man, I told too many people. I really need to hold myself accountable because I've got these people that are really looking to encourage me. And now that they know my true goal, they're going to be looking to me to really do what I promised and said I would do. So sometimes that external validation is that secret sauce to getting you to finally commit to making those life changes that you're really looking for when you accomplish this goal. So this next question is really a little bit of homework. So this is a call to action for you, is to think about, have you done just recently? I know many of us do New Year's resolutions. We do goal setting every single year. But if you go back 12 months to the apps and the AI support that was available to what is available today, I'm going to pretty much promise that the availability of applications and support to hold you accountable to your goals is going to be significantly different from the last time you checked. So your homework, my call to action to you, is to go do an inventory. Go do some research on what is available now, and then look through it. What is available right now in today's marketplace, either free or for a small fee, that can help to keep you accountable to drafting your goals, documenting them, and tracking them, and figure out between now and the next couple months, like New Year's resolutions or setting goals doesn't have to be done by a certain date. Give yourself some time to kind of play around with some of that tech that's out there and find the one that works for you. One of my older brothers, he gave me some great advice. I said, how do you always do so good with accomplishing your New Year's resolutions? And he said, Rach, let me tell you a secret. I start my New Year's resolutions in October. And then the ones that stick, that I see that I'm really getting some good momentum, those are the ones that I tell people about in January. So I want you to do the same thing with this tech inventory. Go find the 4 or 5 or 6 tech solutions to writing your goals and setting them and measuring them. Play with them for the next couple weeks, and then figure out the ones that works best for how you work, how your brain operates, and then that's the one that can go forward with you into this next year. Let's talk about the fun part. So how do you reward yourself so that you stay accountable? Tip number 1, don't wait until the goal is fully accomplished before you reward yourself. It's those little steps, those significant milestones that might seem little, but aren't the final. That's where you need to really reward yourself. And that doesn't mean you need a complete new outfit, new bag, new shoes, or a fancy vacation. That means you pick a reward that is that matches the accomplishment that you did. So let's say you are training for your first marathon. Maybe your reward is after hitting your running regiment that you had set out, or your commitment to go to the gym, and you did it for 30 days in a row. Let's say you made a promise that you'd go to the gym 4 days a week for the next 30 days, and you did that. Maybe a good reward is a new gym bag, a new pair of shoes, maybe a new sports bottle, something that will kind of help you in the next 30 days for that same goal. So try to make the reward match the goal or the milestones that you're in, but make sure that it's something that continues to bring you along in the progression of that goal. Okay, so if you're trying to lose weight, maybe the goal isn't to splurge and go eat a whole cake by yourself, but maybe that splurge is to buy a new outfit, or to buy a new recipe book, or a new air fryer. So something that falls in line with that health and that wellness that matches the goal that you're shooting for. So staying accountable is a little bit different than overcoming challenges. So I've shared some tips on how to hold yourself accountable. Now let's talk about some tips on how to overcome challenges. You're going to have some bumps in the road. There's a reason that these goals are still goals for you, and they're not something in your rearview mirror. So a couple things to think about is, how do you pick yourself back up and refresh that energy when you first set the goal, when things don't happen like you thought they would? Maybe you thought you were going to be running faster, or have more results from the gym, or your goals at work would have been accomplished already and you had to slow down. When you start feeling those things happening, some of the ways to get over those challenges is to refresh your goal. The reason that you're doing it, remind yourself, why was this goal important to me in the first place? And sometimes just that refresher of what brought you to that goal in the first place is enough to get you past it. The second piece is to make sure that when you feel yourself starting to kind of go down in your energy or your enthusiasm for that goal, have a predetermined trigger on how to bounce back. So think about that as you're defining those goals. It's going to be really, really important, because it happens to all of us. The most common challenge that people face in achieving their goals is they have a lot of energy at the beginning of the goal, and then they don't hit the milestone that they thought they were going to hit. And then they start thinking, man, is it even possible? I don't know if I have it in me. I'm too tired. I have too many goals. And they start having that self-doubt and that imposter syndrome. And then that's where goals start piddling out around February or March. And so I think if before you even define your goals, already put in there, what are you going to do when you start losing momentum or you start not achieving where you thought you would be? If you can do that, you're going to help avoid the most common reason why New Year's resolutions become February's dropping out of goals for most people. So figuring out how you're going to manage that self-doubt or that fear of failure, something you got to do. There's no goal attainment without figuring that out. We all have imposter syndrome. We all, hopefully, put goals in place that are just outside of our comfort zone. And so my advice to you, and something that I want to leave you with today, is really thinking about, how do you get past that self-doubt? What is that mantra that's going to be in the back of your head that pushes you through to find that grit, to find that perseverance, and to get past that imposter syndrome and just be like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm gonna fail at my first attempt, so I'm just going to try it again. I might try something different, but I'm going to keep at it because this goal was really important to me, and I'm going to see it through to the end. So a question you might be asking is, okay, so I started my goal. I'm a few months in. How do I know if I have the wrong goal or if I need to change it or revise it in any way? That's a fantastic question, and one I get asked quite often. Couple things. First, be really careful about changing a goal just because you're off track. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong goal or the wrong thing that you should be focusing on, but maybe you need to adjust the measurement. Like, how are you measuring success? That might be the first thing you want to really look at. Second is, do you need to adjust the timing? Was your goal too aggressive? Were you trying to push too fast, too much, and you didn't give yourself time to learn a new skill or to change a behavior? So those are the things that you want to think about. And then if you can answer those questions and say, no, the measurement was good, the actions were good, the timing was good, but it's no longer relevant because I had this big change at work. I no longer need to focus on that goal. I need to focus on this. I need to pivot. So that is where you know, after you've done that reflection, is the timing. Was the timing good? Were the actions good? Were the measurement good? And was the outcome still relevant? Then that is when it's okay. And you've got to reflect and adjust that goal so that they stay what is important to where you need to be by the end of the year. Okay, so a follow-up to that is, What are some signs that a goal may no longer be worth pursuing? 1, did you already pretty much accomplish it? 2, did it stop becoming important? Sometimes we have things, especially as we're adults, things happen in our life that are unforeseen. If that changes, you need to be able to be okay with taking a goal and literally just picking it up out of your life and putting it into the trash. It's no longer important. Sometimes we think things are really, really important, and then we get into them. We realize that there was a deeper goal that's even more important. So it's being able to realize when a goal is no longer relevant is just as important as realizing the goals that are important, and you just need to be a little grittier in order to get it done. After starting your goals, it's really important that you define how often you're going to reflect on those goals, how often you're going to check in with them. So have that plan. Are you going to do it once a month? Are you going to do it once a week? I recommend a balance of both. So maybe checking in with yourself, like how did you just spend the last week? Were any of your goals how you spent your time? Or where did you spend your time on other people's goals? So that's that weekly reflection, right? And that's the power of Friday afternoon, is really looking at how did you spend the week and how are you going to spend the next week? Focusing on your goals, taking specific actions. And then maybe it's once a month that you step back from all of them, or once a quarter, to really see if there's anything you need to pivot, change, stop, continue as you're continuing to work on those goals. So it's really important that you have those reflection times and that you're reevaluating where you need to be and are you where you need to be. So having that mindset of gratitude becomes a very important part of goal attainment. Being able to step back and having a mindfulness of being thankful, being grateful for where you are, the body that you've been given, the brain that you've been given, the health that you've been given, anything that is a significant contributor for you achieving that goal, having that attitude or that mindset of gratitude, of being grateful for those around you that are helping you with your goals, gratitude to yourself for having the grit and persistence to focusing on something that's important to you and achieving your goals. So don't forget that attitude and that mindset of gratitude as you're stepping into this place of achieving those really important goals for yourself. So you may be thinking at this point, how do I have faith that these goals that I set this year are attainable when I didn't do so good on the goals that I was supposed to achieve this year? Keep it simple. Look at the goals from last year. Are they still relevant? Why didn't you achieve them? And are any of them still important enough to focus on this year? And if they are, then utilize the tips and the tricks and the best practices that I've shared today and figure out how to make this year different. We talked about several things that could impact that journey. See which one of them you're missing and incorporate them into the goals for this year. Just because last year didn't work out so good doesn't mean this year is going to have the same narrative at the end of it. You have grown so much more this year compared to last year, and that's part of the journey. So we've spent some time today talking about goals, the things behind them, how to plan them, how to think about them, how to make them a reality. So as you leave today, I want to give you a call to action. Think about the goals that are going to make this next year an amazing 12 months. What does that look like at the end of this coming year? And be very, very selfish about how you spend your time. Once you determine what those goals are, the call to action is that before the new year even starts, schedule what you can, and everything that drives you to those goals, make sure that you have a way to measure it You decide if you need external validation, and you have a plan for when your energy and your grit starts to dip just a little bit, whether it's from yourself or from outside influence, and have that mapped out. Keep your goals very, very simple. And if you have buckets of them, keep that simple as well. So as we're going into this next year, start thinking about what are some tools that would help you. We talked about some of those AI tools that are out there. Start putting together that package of what's going to make you the most successful so that before you even get through the holidays, you already have a pretty good idea of what are the things you're going to focus on. What do you want your story to be next year at this same time? And what all do you need in order to make this the most amazing year of your life so far? This was another episode of Life's Beautiful Synergies. My name's Dr. Rachel Behling, and I would love for you to share in the comments below anything that has helped you on this journey or anything that this podcast has got you thinking about that you can share with myself and others that are watching this podcast. Can't wait to see you next time. Once again, my name is Dr. Rachel Behling. Have a great holiday, and I'll see you soon.